listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
What's up? Hope you're well, and cheers for checking out my show Straight to Video. Right out of the gate, thanks to everyone who helped celebrate episode 200 of the show last week. It was so cool to finally hit that milestone, and I'm glad you all enjoyed the stories from Bullet Boys frontman Mark Torian. If you've not yet heard that chat, please head on back after this episode, as there's some real gold in that one. On today's new show, though, I chat with Slyder Smith, guitarist for legendary underground power pop glam rockers The Last Great Dreamers, who were a fixture on the London hard rock scene in the 1990s, before eventually splitting up for over a decade to later reform and pick up right where they left off, just as good as before. But today, though, Slyder has moved from guitar to singer-guitarist in his new project Slyder Smith and the Oblivion Kids, who, if you're listening to this episode as it comes out, released their new album Charm Offensive today, described as an honest outpouring of grit, glamour and emotion. I'm pretty sure after so long in the business, Slyder will have put his heart and soul into these new songs, so after our talk, check out the album and connect with the band over at slydersmith.com. We get the scoop on the new album Charm Offensive, then rewind to Slyder's early introductions to music, move into London and The Last Great Dreamers, along with stories of touring with Bang Tango, Warrant, and memories of the legendary Marquee Club. Before we get to that talk, though, please show some love and support for Dead Skull Coffee, who have been long-time supporters of this podcast with their amazing ground and full bean coffee. If you want to support a real independent rock and roll company, you can bag yourselves 15% off any order placed through their website at deadskullcoffee.co.uk and simply add the promo code STV on checkout. Also, I'll be out doing some shows playing bass with The Needful Things next week. If you're unfamiliar, we consider ourselves the world's greatest underground supergroup. Basically, it's an excuse to get together with some old band pals and play each other's songs from the 90s, 2000s and beyond, and it's a lot of fun. You can catch us at The Donkey in Leicester on Friday the 26th of August, followed by an appearance at Hard Rock Hell Sleaze on Sunday night the 28th of August. But right now, let's get into this episode's chat and dive into my straight-to-video talk with Slyder Smith. How's things? You're good?
Yeah, not too bad, yeah. I'm a bit knackered. I've been away rehearsing, only up in Bristol, so it's only like 50 miles away, but stayed over 2 days. Yeah, shared a room with Tim. I've roomed with him before, but I didn't realise he snored so much.
Oh, no.
But I think it's because I was sober. You know, I didn't pass out.
Yeah.
Probably last time I shared with him, I probably just passed out. So, yeah, I don't think I got that much sleep. So I got back today and just went lay on the bed and fell asleep. So I've literally been awake about 25 minutes.
Oh, man. How's rehearsal sounding? All good?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. We're all knackered. I lost my voice is the worst thing. I think I hammered it too much yesterday, and it was 33 degrees in Bristol yesterday.
In a rehearsal room as well. It's not
yeah,
what you
I
want
know.
to do.
No aircon, obviously.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's quite grueling. And I could feel it this morning when I was coming out of the hotel. My voice was fine. It just feels like sandpaper sort of thing. And then I just sort of sang and it just got worse. So eventually it sort of went. But yeah, it'll be all right. It'll come back, hopefully.
I'm glad we got to hook this up. I can't remember last time I saw you. It was probably at that Needful Things gig.
I think it was, yeah.
Do you guys go like way back with like Hilda and Ringo and all them lot?
Yes. Basically, it would have been Silver Hearts. Were you in London ever at that point?
I wasn't, mate, no.
So basically, yeah, Silver Hearts formed. I went to London in 1989 when I met Mark, and we formed the band. Probably quite soon after that, we met all that lot, Water Brats. And Steve Granger, he joined Silver Hearts in 92, I think, 91, 92. And he shared a flat with Rich from the Water Brats. Yeah, I think the others lived up in Kennington, didn't they? Hilda and Ringo. So yeah, that's all from back then, basically. So I've sort of known them for, I don't know, can't even count that far back.
Can't even do the math at this point.
Yeah.
I want to dive back into your history a little and chat about your early introductions to music, coming to London in the late 80s and the success and legacy, I guess, of The Last Great Dreamers. But of course, bring things right up to date, branching out with your new album, Charm Offensive, and tour under the name now of Slyder Smith and the Oblivion Kids. So let's just rewind just a little bit. Am I right? You're originally from Portsmouth?
That's it. Yeah. Where'd you get that from? That's good.
How was it growing up there? Was music always like high on your list of favourite things?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I was a child, and probably a lot of people I've met in music are similar to me, but I think, some got into music a bit later, but I remember records from when I was watching Top of the Pops stuff when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I remember it quite clearly, things like Alvin Stardust and Susie Quattro, stuff like that on Top of the Pops. Probably not allowed to say this, but I'll say it anyway. My first record was Gary Glitter. It's a little bit after his kind of heyday. It was 75. It was a record called Papa Oom Mau Mau. And it was the only record I had. And I just used to upset my entire family by just playing that record over and over and over and over again.
Well, that's what you did.
The B-side as well. I don't remember what my second record was, but I think everyone was quite relieved when they got me a second record that I, had two to play. I guess I remember, it's funny looking back, I was into things like darts, which is kind of very rock and roll. And there's a big 50s revival in the 70s, wasn't there, really, with stuff like Shawaddy Waddy and all that stuff. So that was big in our house. And I had an older brother and sister as well.
What's the age difference?
So I'm the youngest and my brother's 2 years older. My sister's 4 years older.
Oh, mate, you got it all then.
Yeah, so it was great. It was really cool. And I think that's why I got into music a bit younger than some, perhaps, because I was listening to their music as well. Me and my brother shared a room, so we used to sort of listen to each other's music and stuff. And my sister as well. And we got into, I suppose, 1978 to me was a really pivotal year. And again, I was like an 8-year-old, but bought so many records in that year. When I watched it all Top of the Pops from that year, and you see stuff like Boomtown Rats and Blondie and The Jam, one of my favourite bands. I just loved all that stuff.
But you say 78, I'm spying a Van Halen album in the background.
Yeah, I didn't get that until later. It's kind of weird. I think things like Status Quo were always in the house, probably my sister's bedroom coming from there. There's so much stuff. And that's why I love pop music as well. But I did get into metal, like you're saying, about stuff like Van Halen. I think Ace of Spades was 1979, wasn't it? Something like that. I remember that. Slade, when they came back, they played Donington around about 80, something like that. We'll Bring the House Down. So yeah, I just sort of started learning about all that stuff. AC/DC was big when I was a kid at school, maybe sort of 10 years old. Would have been when Back in Black come out, Highway to Hell, obviously those two albums, stuff like that, So yeah, I suddenly got into metal.
That is like super early though, to be into that, like around like 10, 11.
Yeah, I guess it is. But I think it's probably because I had an elder brother and sister. I sort of grew up quicker, maybe.
Was you showing all that or playing that to your friends and stuff?
At school, I remember like Back in Black and things like that, borrowing that album off somebody at school. And again, things like the Sex Pistols as well. I had the Great Rock and Roll Swindle. Might have been a Christmas present. I can't remember, but I flogged it and then bought more Motorhead albums or something, So yeah, I got very into sort of metal. I was in Scotland then as a kid, and then we moved back down to Portsmouth.
How old was you when you moved up to Scotland?
Just under 5 years old, yeah. My dad worked as a civilian bit in the dockyard in Portsmouth and got a promotion up to Rosyth. So it was that or New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so yeah, it could have been a bit different.
Yeah.
Might have been a sheep shearer or something,
How long was you up in Scotland for then?
Until 81, then back to Portsmouth.
How did you like that, moving from like technically to a different country and fitting in? Was that tough for you?
I think we were all pretty pleased to get back what we considered to be back home, to be honest. My parents split up. That was the reason for the move home. So, there was that part of it. But I was sort of young enough to not, at the time, let that bother me, or it didn't seem to bother me, But yeah, it was also quite an exciting year as well, because I went to my first gig at 1981 as well. And my mum kind of wanted us to go to the theatre and go to gigs and experience stuff, because we lived in the countryside. We sort of didn't have much experience of life. And yeah, me and my brother went to see Saxon, Portsmouth Guildhall in 1981. So again, I was a little 11-year-old kid with his denim jacket with his patches on and all that sort of stuff. And all the bigger boys sort of taking the piss, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but how great to see a gig at that age, though. Who was supporting him?
It was a band called Riot from Australia, I think. Listen to him again. I've still got that album, Fire Down Under. So that's the first band technically I ever saw. And it still sounds great today.
Even that makes such an impression to you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Every band I saw were now my next favourite band that age. You just love them. I think there's a band called Sweet Savage I saw next who supported Thin Lizzy the same year. It's amazing. I saw some great bands. I saw Motorhead several times, a classic lineup, Status Quo, just hundreds of bands, because they all visited Portsmouth, and so we just got our tickets, and that's when you could go to the box office and hand your £4.50 over. And
exactly, man. So you moved back down, you live with your mum when you moved back down to Portsmouth. Once hard rock kind of took hold, How was that received both in the house and in your town as like, I guess the hair started getting bigger and the clothes a little bit more flamboyant?
It was quite funny. I mean, my mum loved all our music. When we went to see Saxon and Thin Lizzy again, she actually came along and she queued up with us to meet Biff and the boys and all that sort of stuff.
Did that happen?
Yeah, so I was only about 12 then, so yeah. But she got into the music and it was big in our household and we'd all play records together and we'd listen to my mum's music. And
I want to know more about meeting Biff and Saxon.
It was probably quite uneventful. We queued up and then they were sort of sat behind a table. It was in the sort of foyer of the Portsmouth Guildhall.
Oh, right. So a meet and greet in the early 80s.
Yeah, it was like you just sort of queued up. And I think because my mum had always been to the theatre back in the 50s and 60s and gone to the stage door to meet the actors and so on. So it was kind of normal to do that, you know. So she was kind of teaching us how things went down sort of thing, I guess. So yeah, it was great. And yeah, we queued up. Biff said hello to my mum and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was actually...
Superb.
It was funny because when I went to school then down in Portsmouth, nobody liked rock music. So I was kind of a bit of an outcast. And I think that's probably quite important as well in my sort of becoming a musician, because I think I embraced that and kind of went with it even further.
I've spoke to a few people about that. It's like, because you almost can get bullied for being into something like that. But I think sometimes when, like what you say, when you're so passionate about something, you do embrace it, because it's one of those things where, well, I know I'm right. I know how much I love this stuff. I don't give a shit. People can say whatever they want.
Yeah, no, it was kind of like that. And yeah, all the girls liked, I mean, stuff that I kind of like now, strangely, in some respects, things like Spandau Ballet and all that kind of stuff. And you had like, I don't know if you had this where you were, but like the dressers and casuals and all the guys were sort of wearing Italian designer jumpers, carrying umbrellas to school and having their hair permed. I had my tan cowboy boots and black jeans and leather jacket and trying my best to grow my hair, which was not an easy task.
It's not that first time you try and grow it. It seems to take forever.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose what changed in a way, I suppose around about the 80s, sort of mid-80s, and there was this kind of new look in heavy metal or heavy rock, maybe Def Leppard, bands like that, where they were kind of looking a bit trendy and wearing stripy jeans and red jeans and white jeans and using hairspray and getting the hair highlighted and all this sort of stuff. So that kind of appealed to me. Yeah, I kind of got into that sort of look, and then Motley Crue sort of appeared.
Just took it to the next level.
Yeah, I was just attracted by that. And suddenly, it was about 85, I guess. I went to see them up at Hammersmith on the Theatre of Pain tour.
Was that the first time you've been to London?
I would have been on a day trip with my mum or something when I was younger. It probably was, to be honest. Yeah.
Who'd you go with?
I went with my girlfriend at the time and my brother, maybe his girlfriend. I don't know. We went up on the train because it's not, sort of train journey from Portsmouth to London. It's about 75 miles. I remember it being pretty big and all that, but I suppose I thought I was pretty cool by then, so it didn't faze me, you know.
What was Tommy Lee doing at that time with his drums?
He was doing 90 degrees at that point. When you look back, that wasn't that impressive, was it? It looked like he kind of got stuck or something. Yeah. But it was good for me. I enjoyed it. So, yeah, and I saw Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet tour about the same sort of time as well at Hammersmith. So I suppose that was a point where the bands that you liked weren't any longer coming to Portsmouth. You know, I don't think Tommy Lee's fancy drum kit would have got into the Guildhall. No. You had to go to London to see such events.
Was you playing guitar at this point?
Yeah, my first band back in Scotland, I had a couple of mates. There's a guy called Andrew McKnight. We used to call him Paddy, his nickname. He was an Irish kid at school, and another guy, Andrew Pepper, and he played classical guitar. And because it was up in Scotland, they'd have the pipe band. And I remember getting some drumsticks from the school shop just because I wanted drumsticks. I didn't want to play in the band, the pipe band. Just wanted to hit stuff. And I think Paddy sang. Andrew McKnight had his classical guitar, and I used to hit around his house. He had like a football table. So we'd have like the biscuit tin with the snare, and we'd have Tupperware for tom-toms and all that. And we just put on Highway to Hell and just fucking make a racket. And we were called Paddy and the Dogs. So that was my first band. So that was when I was maybe 10 or 11.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and after that, I suppose I sort of messed around trying to get something together with some mates when I was maybe 12, 13. It didn't really happen. And then my brother was a few years older, and there was some kids in his year that had bands and stuff, and I got into this band with them.
And this is playing guitar?
Yeah, so I was playing guitar. I wasn't playing the Tupperware anymore.
No. What was your first guitar?
My mum bought me Satellite. I don't think they make them anymore. It's probably very collectible now. I think it was 55 quid from Kay's catalogue. I had a little 5-watt amp. I just wanted it to make that kind of kerrang noise that, we sort of know and love now, that term. Yeah, I remember swapping a leather jacket for this thing off my mate's brother, who was like a bit of a punk, and he had this little preamp box, and I swapped it for a leather jacket, and I just turned everything up, and it went, "Arr." And I couldn't play any chords. I just kind of hit the strings, and it made the noise. That was before going into this band. So I started learning from books and things. I went for guitar lessons. Yeah, so going into this band, I just sort of had to plug in and join in sort of thing. So just kind of looking at the other guy and copying his bar chords and things. And it was quite good for me because it made me just get on with it.
It is. It's sometimes good just throw yourself in with other people. You learn so much more. You could play in your bedroom for months and months, but you'll learn so much more in a fast time frame when you're with other musicians. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
Who was your guy? Who was your guitar guy back then?
Well, it's funny because I was a big Gillan fan and Deep Purple. So Bernie Tormey and Richie Blackmore really when I was younger. But I guess when I got into, I probably didn't really have anyone then because I don't think Mick Mars could be a guitar hero, could he? So I just think I wanted to play. And I mean, Richie Blackmore was always important in my life, I remember doing an interview with Silver Hearts and mentioned him, and Mark got a bit annoyed for me mentioning him because it wasn't like Andy McCoy or whatever. But saying that, yeah, probably Andy McCoy as well because of Hanoi and everything. Mate had all these Hanoi singles, and when I heard that, I just, fell in love with that. And that's where things really changed and changed my look. And I got into sort of a new glam look, Mike Monroe and everything.
When did London really come onto your radar and you began seriously thinking this was the place I need to be and might have to move?
After the band Scarlet Tarts that I was in, which was this kind of...
Scarlet Tarts?
Scarlet Tarts, first proper band, first gigging band, yeah. And we played the Fareham Youth Centre. That was my first ever live show. So after that kind of lasted a year or so. And then I put a band together, another bad name, Anyone's Daughter, we were called. That came from a Deep Purple song. That was pretty good. And we were quite popular. We used to play sort of locally around the various places in Portsmouth. That kind of fizzled out as well. And that was the point where I tried to find something in the town and I just thought there's nothing down here. And when I was looking through Kerrang and stuff, you just see every week all these adverts for guitarists. And I just kind of used to think I've got to get to London. And I used to go up there because Dogs D'Amour was another important band that I discovered. And after Hanoi went because of Razzle and everything, my brother used to do record fairs. So we'd have like stock hanging around the house. I remember finding this Kid from Kensington yellow 12-inch vinyl and sticking it on. And I think it's just hearing the saxophone and all that in there. It just sort of reminded me of Hanoi Rocks. And I knew then that was the band that replaced Hanoi that were current for me. At the same time with Choir Boys, their first couple of singles. So that was the whole vibe. I started getting into that kind of the sleaze vibe, I guess you'd call it now. Yeah, I just thought I've got to get to London if I want to play in a band like that. Sort of eventually plucked up the courage to answer some ads. And one of them was placed by Mr. Valentine.
Right. So that was prior to you moving to London. You'd seen the ad.
Yeah. So Mark had just moved to London from Norfolk. I remember seeing his ad. It was around about March 89. Then the same one went in again, but it's worded a bit differently. I think it was just guitarists, but then it was musicians. So he'd found a bass player and a drummer, which was Ginger and Jules. And I went up and met the three of them. And yeah, I was kind of quite full on. I was kind of like, well, am I in or not sort of thing. I thought, well, I've done all right,
Was you learning the songs on the spot then, or did they mail you a cassette tape? Or
I can't remember. I don't think I got anything beforehand. I think it was pretty much I spoke to him and then went up there the following Saturday or something.
Where did you meet up at? Was it like a rehearsal room or did you meet up in a pub first?
I think I went to Mark's place. He had a little bedsit/flat sort of thing in Mornington Crescent, Camden. I think I went there, met him basically, and maybe met the others. And then we all went down to, I think, somewhere in Kentish Town. And that was where we rehearsed initially. It's all new to me that I'd never been in a rehearsal studio before. Used to rehearse in someone's bedroom or the church hall or
upstairs in a pub or something like that.
Yeah. So that was quite a new thing for me. Yeah, it was good. It just felt like things are happening,
What was the atmosphere like in London around that time from like a musician's point of view?
Well, it was all just very new and exciting. It's hard to remember back in a way to how you felt after all these years, but yeah, it felt kind of exciting because you didn't have anything to feel jaded or bitter and twisted about.
What did you and Mark connect on together? Was it similar bands? Because I say you're more from, well, let's say a heavy metal background, but where was Mark coming in from? But where did you meet in the middle?
He was in a band called Guns for Hire prior to that, and he had like a flat top haircut. And actually in his advert, he put Dogs D'Amour, Hanoi Rocks, and Billy Idol was in his advert. So I think he liked the rock and roll stuff and the Clash and things like that. So a bit more pop, but, we all like the same music because it's funny because people do think, and even in the band that I'm the rock guy and he's the pop guy, but, he's fan of Adam and the Ants, things like that. But equally I am, because like I've said, all the new wave stuff, that was really my early love of music. But I just sort of went into the sort of heavy metal bit. I think when you get into that, the door shuts behind you and you're not allowed to listen to anything else,
It does, yeah. It consumes you for a while.
Yeah. And then you realise, there's other types of music I'm allowed to listen to now. So, and I suppose getting into Hanoi and stuff, then I learnt about the Clash and the Ramones and all these sorts of things. But my music taste is very broad. But it's really about the whole sleaze scene. That was the thing. It was sort of Soho sleaze, Dogs, Choir Boys, all that sort of stuff. There were so many bands and it was brilliant. I mean, we used to go to this pub called the Royal George on Tottenham Court Road, which is just around the corner from the Astoria and the Borderline and the Hellfire Club. And it was a world I'd never been in before. It was great. It was kind of freedom in a way. I'd just go up there Saturday night and we'd go out and then we'd back to his, rehearse the next day and I'd go home again. And it was just like a little rock and roll holiday every week sort of thing. And we did start gigging and I'd be driving up from Portsmouth to the gigs and driving home, going to work the next day and all that sort of stuff.
You originally called Silver Hearts and went under that name for a few years. Did you slot right into that scene when you started gigging?
It just all fell into place in a way. And Mark had some contacts and we had some good contacts at the Marquee Club as well. And again, that was just around the corner from where we used to hang out. And so many bands playing at that point, and used to get these nights at the Marquee where it was like £1 before 8. So people could all flood in. And it was a very vibrant scene. And it was a bit like that all over the country. There were some bands in London that would just play London and they were just kind of like part-timers to us because we started really working hard and we quit our jobs and just did it full on. We didn't earn any money. You signed on, you just tried your best to get a record deal and becoming a rock superstar, which we all believed could happen. I moved to London and we pursued a career in a rock and roll band. We'd get all over the country and play everywhere and anywhere you could. We'd go through all the gig guides and you'd list all the venues where you knew like Rich Rags were playing or whoever and be booking shows wherever you could. Thinking about that period, between sort of 18, 19 years old through to, when most kind of people are at university, I was traveling around the country in the back of a transit van playing gigs and quite glad I did that rather than going to university, to be honest, I don't think a lot of people get the chance to do it, nowadays.
The music scene begins to take a shift in the early 90s and you guys decide to rebrand and settle on the name Last Great Dreamers. What was your reference for that? Did the sound change much or was it just the image? Was it a total overhaul of the band?
Well, obviously the grunge thing, grunge revolution coming in and sort of, it kind of changed things overnight, it felt like, with Guns N' Roses were huge and all this stuff. And all of a sudden it was all Nirvana and all that kind of stuff. And kind of liked all that sort of thing personally. And I think the look of our band from the sleaze thing, that sort of toned down. And I think we found our own look and our own sound as well. Because our early demos, some of those songs would just sound like blatant rip-offs to the Choir Boys. It's quite cringeworthy when you hear some of that stuff, But I think eventually we found our sound. It was round about 93, 94. As Silver Hearts, we met this guy that was an agent in London and he couldn't take us on without a deal, but he put me on to these guys in Newcastle that were signing sort of smaller bands or whatever. And they wanted to put us on a best of British rock bands compilation. I think that went on chatting for like that about 2 months. And then they basically said, we want to sign you up for a 3-album deal because we can't find any other bands that we want to sign for this record. So we just want to sign you. And they loved glam rock. They loved Mott the Hoople, T-Rex, all this stuff. They sort of saw that vibe in us. But sort of behind the scenes, we sort of planned this name change. I don't quite know how it happened, but we had a song that Mark wrote called Last Great Dreamer. We were playing that at Silver Hearts. So we did a demo. Basically, the cover of it said Silver Hearts, and it was called Last Great Dreamer, the demo. And that's where that kind of all started. And we must have had a conversation. Let's change the name. So we had the deal. We hadn't recorded anything. And we went to them and said, we're proposing we change our name to this. And we had this idea that we wanted to embrace the 70s look and a modern version of the real extreme sort of 1972 vibe. And that's what we did. We did the record with them and we got a lot of press in Kerrang, especially, I think, because of our look.
How easy was it to find the vintage clothes back then?
Well, it was really quite easy in a way, if you knew where to look. And I still love that vibe and I still look for kind of 70s stuff, but it's much harder to find now. Yeah, we used to go to Kensington Market, Portobello Road, Greenwich Market. There's some really cool vintage shops that did a lot of clothes, but again, you'd find them in charity shops in those days as well.
Before they started hiking the prices on them.
Exactly, yeah. I think during the time, that period, mid-90s, you'd find like 1970s racks in Oxfam and stuff. We would say then that shopping became like more important than the music.
That's a great quote.
Fuck the rehearsal. We want to go to the charity shops,
We want to look good.
Yeah, but it got, quite extreme. And both Mark and I, and again, I remember this from interviews and that saying this sort of stuff, that we lived it. It wasn't like we put on this uniform to go to do a gig. You know, I was walking around Sainsbury's in my flares and my stacks, and I'd be driving there in my Mark III Cortina, you know, and we lived the life. Mark had a 1975 Toyota Celica, and we did some really cool photo shoots with my Cortina down on the Thames with Ray Palmer from Kerrang, and he loved it as well. You know, they just thought it was great, and there was nothing like it. It was all grunge everywhere, and us idiots in tartan flares.
Incredible. And I say you released the album Retrosexual in late 94, but you were still dangling your toes in the glam rock, which was, I'm going to call it glam rock, well, the hard rock, which was surviving, because didn't you still support Warrant and Bang Tango around that time too?
Yeah, we got with Adam Parsons, who's doing big things now. I think he manages Black Star Riders. But yeah, he was an agent. Thing was called Big Rock Talent. We went out on tour with Bang Tango first, I think it was, 6 or 7 in the UK, and we went to Holland and Belgium. It was brilliant. It was amazing. I mean, we were, I'd be about 25 years old. It was just a party non-stop. We travelled separately, but yeah, we got on really well with those guys. We used to play loads of pranks on them, and we were just always like drunk and just being stupid, and they couldn't quite fathom what was going on. They enjoyed it, which was good, but they just didn't know how to deal with it. You know, they'd laugh at us and think we were hilarious. They tried to prank us back, but they sort of struggled. But once they gaffer taped all our bags and possessions to the ceiling of the dressing room, which was quite a good one. We did this brilliant prank. It was the last day of the tour. It was over in Holland. Basically, the bass guitarist Kyle, he had like his hair slicked back and a goatee beard and wraparound shades, and he wore a leather waistcoat and he had like a cross on the back and all this stuff. Anyway, I don't know how we come up with the idea, because we just used to come up with stupid stuff. We thought, well, I'll dress up as him. There, right. So I put on must have had a leather waistcoat, but I just put it on with no shirt underneath. We put a silver gaffer tape cross on the back. We had a chain that we used to chain our gear up in the van. I wrapped that all around my waist, greased my hair back. I made a little goatee beard out of gaffer tape, got the shades and everything. I used Paul's left-handed bass, and that kind of felt extra comedy as well, because it didn't suit me or feel right. And in this cupboard in this dressing room, there was like all these long white like lab coats and brooms, and there's some white welly boots in there. I don't know if it's like a fishmonger's cupboard or something. I don't know what it was, but again, I won't go into all the details of why, but we used to carry around this like sack full of props, like wigs and false hands and things, just for our own amusement. We picked rubbish up in joke shops, and we all thought it was hilarious. So the other guys had like wigs on and funny glasses, and they put on these coats, and one had the white wellies on. So anyway, during their set, they're doing the intro to this song. Joe Leste was kind of like, he reminded me of Steve Tyler, the way he sort of would jump around and posture around. He was like facing the audience, and he sort of jumped around, faced the drum riser. And I walked on, basically dressed up as Kyle, pretending to play bass. Kyle sees me, and he's just like, what the fuck? The others were all laughing. Joe didn't see, and then they kind of stopped playing until Joe jumped around and saw us, and the rest followed on the stage with brooms and was sweeping the stage, and it was quite a quiet gig as well. So that's the sort of stupid crap we did, and I think they went back home and then split up after that. And then the other big one was Warrant. And again, we were equally stupid with that, but we didn't really hang out with them much. They were a little bit more aloof. But again, we did stupid stuff. I remember finding we found some knickers in the street or something, put them on their windscreen wiper and things like that. Like boyish pranks and things, you know, and I think they just thought we were wankers and didn't talk to us.
The Marquee Club had closed in 96. Did that have a big effect on the bands and the scene around that time? Did that just kind of seal the deal on the London scene?
Yeah, I think that was very symbolic, you know, the collapse of it all. And it all shifted to Camden, and we actually played the last weekend at the Marquee. It was a Friday, Saturday, and we played on the Friday night. Yeah, it's very sad. I think we played well in excess of 30 gigs at the Marquee in one way or another, sort of some headline shows, fair few, but lots of supports there. We played with Susie Quattro there. We played with another really good gig was Heroes del Silencios, the biggest band in Spain at the time.
If you could pick one gig, does one in particular jump to mind at the Marquee?
I think maybe that one, Heroes del Silencios, because it was pretty much sold out. But then again, the Susie one, I remember because of being a fan of hers when I was a kid. She was really lovely, and she came to our dressing room to say hi and everything. And Dogs the More, we'd played with them, the Daryl Bath lineup. So yeah, that's 3, sorry.
That's fine.
But yeah, it was a good scene. And yeah, when that went, it kind of killed it all. Last weekend, everyone was sort of, what we're going to get as a souvenir, and sort of like taking the place apart, wanting to take something home. And so in the dressing room, and there's a boxing, like in the toilet, like where the pipes boxed in, like made out of plywood. And there was the only sort of worthy autograph left in there at the time, worthy. I don't think it's worth much now. I ripped this off and stuck it in my guitar case. I ripped a bit of the wall down, and it's a Rolf Harris autograph. It's silver, you know, those pens, you know, the silver paint pens. And he'd done a little roll for Rue and signed it. So I took that. I thought that'd be worth a few quid in years to come.
Where's that sat now?
That's in a vault with my Gary Glitter single.
Incredible. The band would have another name change to Jet City, but later split in 97, I believe. Had things kind of just run its course?
I think we all felt the band musically were at our strongest then. And I'd say everything shifted up to Camden, and we kind of went up and started playing these pub gigs in Camden. But we were, what was I, 27? Mark was about 30 or something. And I think both of us felt we were ancient because everyone up there was 17 years old, and they were all getting a bit excited and drinking too much and taking drugs and throwing up and passing out and stuff. And we were like, what the fuck's going on here? And I didn't like it. I just got a bit fed up with it. And I didn't do that sort of stuff. And I felt like you had to go out and be seen and all that. And I just couldn't be bothered.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. And it got a bit soul destroying because we'd been somewhere we felt and should have gone further. And
that's when that jaded thing starts to sink in.
Yeah, it started coming in. We got a deal with a company called X Records. One of our A&R men was Fergal Sharkey, and he came to see us at the Water Rats. This is 95, I think, 95, 96. I just thought, this is it now. Then it kind of went a bit quiet after we chased this one deal. It turned out the money, the investment in this company was pulled. So therefore, Fergal's gone, the deal's gone, and that was that. So we were left with nothing. And we, I think our manager sort of went to these other companies that were interested, and they'd all kind of moved on, and I think probably signed Placebo or somebody like this. We'd done number one Wonderboy and Astro Eyes as a single for our previous label, and it was never released, and they thought that was great. And it was 96 because they were talking about number one Wonderboy and trying to get that song used because of the Euro 96 tournament and David Seaman as number one Wonderboy, the England number one. So, it felt like this is it. We're going to make it. I started going to the estate agent and looking at houses in Clapham and stuff like that.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm just going to buy a house, go on holiday with the rest or whatever. But yeah, it all fell apart. And then if I had it again, I wouldn't have changed the name. I think that was a mistake to Jet and then Jet City. But we started doing the club circuit in Camden, and then we'd had enough of it, really. Mark instigated the split, and that was that. I sort of remember at the time sort of thinking it's just like akin to sort of shooting an injured horse. That's how it felt. It was upsetting and sad, but it felt necessary to stop at that point.
The band did eventually reunite, but many, many years later, Mark moved to America and came back. And I think you realised there was a renewed interest in the band, which led to like a real second chapter since 2014 with lots of new music and tours. But right now, both you and Mark, you're kind of in solo band territory. Mark with Future Obscure, and you're about to release Charm Offensive. How has it been for you, like stepping up as frontman?
Straight after Dreamers split the first time, I put together a band quite quickly and started writing songs, became very prolific in writing. And I did put together a three-piece and sang lead vocal in that. That ran from 98, 99 through to 2002. And we did okay, but it was all mostly London. It never really had the same vibe and the same feel as Last Great Dreamers as a unit. It felt like me and some other people. But it was good. We had some good fun. And I had a track, I can't remember what it used to be called, but it ended up a Dreamers song. Mark added a line in the chorus, and we swapped some lines around, and it became a Last Great Dreamers song called Today. That's what it was called. Yeah, that was played by Steve Lamack on Radio 1. Claire Sturgis played it on XFM, like a sort of new band slot. That was called Toy Eye, quite short-lived. And I kind of disbanded and reformed and called it Plan 9. And that lasted till about 2002, and then moved to Somerset, left London, had enough of this. I was there for music, and music wasn't in my life anymore. So it's like, let's get out sort of thing. Yeah, so having done the thing with Mark again, it's sort of Dreamers haven't split up, but this time I kind of said to Mark, the lockdown came in and we'd done a couple of albums, new albums, new material, and released them. We've done a lot of touring, went out with the Choir Boys, Electric Boys, Enough's Enough. And we were still finding it quite hard to sort of break through sort of bigger time, and it's expensive recording an album, and I think for both of us, we couldn't really see a way of recording a follow-up to 13th Floor Renegades that was going to be worthy of being the follow-up. And sort of lockdown came along, and there was talk about doing stuff via email and all that. And I just didn't want to do it personally. I just think if you're going to write with somebody, you want to be in the same room as them. Call me old-fashioned. And it felt like a relief when we both agreed, let's not do anything. It just seemed like there was a pressure to do it because everyone else was doing it. So when I decided, right, no, Mark, yeah, agreed, I don't want to do it either. That was that then. So prior to that, Mark hadn't wanted to tour for various, he had his reasons, and we did want to tour. And the three of us, me, Tim and Rick, went out as Three Great Dreamers without Mark, and really enjoyed it. But I think what had happened with that is that, we had a great tour with Enough's Enough, and it was quite a few dates, I think. I just absolutely loved it. I loved being the lead singer. Each night got better and better. And the last night, I just remember saying it, to the crowd, it was up at Blackpool. I didn't want to leave the stage that night. I didn't want to leave the tour. I just could have done that forever. I remember thinking consciously, and I've only had a few moments that in your life when you're on stage and you just get a bit of a moment. And that was one of them. And I was just thinking, I don't want this to end. Yeah, I feel a bit emotional talking about it, to be honest. I knew that I wanted to do that. I wanted to be the lead singer and to sing. And it had been such a nice tour and we'd had such a nice time and we'd all been out for dinner together that night. And yeah, that last show was just a bit of an emotional thing, you know, and did do stuff together after that. But then getting up to lockdown again, we did the Sleaze thing without Mark because he couldn't make it for various reasons, sort of health stuff and whatnot. And again, it was a fantastic gig. And I felt I really nailed it personally when I went out there. Got a really good reaction, big crowd in front of us. But there's still that thing where people come up and say, oh, it's really great. Oh, it's a shame Mark's not here and all that. And you've got to say, well, it's a shame, but we were fucking great, you know, as well.
Did you see that? What I just did?
Exactly. You know, it's no offense to Mark or anything like that, but that made it difficult for me because I wanted to celebrate what we'd done. And we thought we'd done really well and we're great, but there was still that thing going on. And that made me think I want to do this unapologetically. So that came to like, I'll write some new songs and put a new band together. And so it's kind of like a solo thing, but I wanted it to be inclusive to Rick and Tim if they wanted to be involved in it. So it wasn't me and a backing band sort of thing. So that's where it began really. So that's kind of like a year ago, I guess.
So it's come together pretty up fast then to say we're at this point now where you're on the brink of releasing. I mean, you've already released a couple of singles and videos, new album, tour. So that's pretty fast work.
I think when I know I want to do something, I just do it. I do plan and research a lot, but I think there's something to be said for jumping in and getting on with it. And I think if you plan too much, you'll see too many pitfalls and you'll talk yourself out of it.
You ventured down the route of Kickstarter. You'd previously used Pledge for Last Great Dreamers. Was it daunting at all doing that after Pledge music had ended so badly? Because that was just such a shame.
Yeah, well, Kickstarter had been around. Were they one of the first, perhaps, in movies and things like that, wasn't it? And businesses. So it's kind of quite broad. Pledge Music was great the first time. And I remember meeting somebody at a show in London that worked for Pledge Music, and it seemed like a good company. And the second time we used them, it was still all good. And I like the tech side of it was all easy to use and set up. The second time, struggling to get the money from them, there was a few excuses about we're changing our payment system and this and that. And it was the year they went bust, basically. And we did get our money, but it was some months late. And then it was only a few months later that we heard that bands like the Choir Boys and what have you had maybe never got the money. So I think we were fortunate that it was just before that because, you know, you go into this thing and you think, right, well, we're going to raise the money by that means. So I'm going to pay for the studio on my credit card. And it's kind of the way you can do it, but in the sort of thought that you're going to get that money back and pay the debt sort of thing. So we were fortunate that we did get our money eventually. Then it all went tits up for them. So Kickstarter wasn't really worried in that respect. They've been around a lot longer. And I looked at a lot of other different things, Patreon, and there's a few others, but I felt Kickstarter was a good one. And
any reaction from the fans on that one? Was they hesitant? I'll flip it on its head, not necessarily your concern, but was there any hesitation from the fan base?
Not that I know of. Nothing that I heard. I mean, there may well have been people that didn't do it for that reason, but people were very keen. And, you know, I was really pleased with the result. It went really well, and I wouldn't hesitate to do it again.
Kind of in closing, do you think the Slyder Smith who moved to London in the late 80s, would he believe you'd be getting set to release and tour I guess your debut, technically a solo album, some 30-something years later? What would he have said?
I don't know, really. He probably would have thought I'd just be too old to do anything.
You got till you're 27 and you're out.
Yeah, I used to feel too old then. I mean, like, hitting 30, that was a real milestone. It was like quite depressing. You know, that is worse than being 40. So 50 is even worse than that, man. But no, it was a funny time being 30. But I think now you don't really give a fuck.
But there's just so many more opportunities now just to do it yourself. Back then it was, you got to get the record deal. If the record company sees you such and such age, they're not going to bother with you. But now you can just do it off your own back. There's so many more chances to do it.
And I like that. Mark and I set up Ray Records together, which I'm putting my record out on. We've got distribution with Cargo Records, which means it can be in the shops worldwide. So that's all covered. You know, I don't see the point in a record label unless they're giving you a huge amount of money to pay for everything.
They're just a bank at the end of the day who you're going to owe lots of money to.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling my way with it. You know, you kind of like anything. If you can get experts in areas that you don't have expertise, that's what it's all about, I think, as a self-employed person, which I've been self-employed all my life. So this kind of feels like an extension of that. Apart from the trouble with this business is that your heart rules your head. So you make decisions that you maybe wouldn't do. So I think I'm trying to kind of be a bit more brutal about things to not lose so much money because it's easy to do. But it's hard, you know, because if you want to do something and it's offered to you and they say, well, you can do it, but we're not going to pay you. We're going to give you a crate of beer. It's difficult. And as Tim says, you know, we've been up and coming for 35 years.
I want to wish you the best of luck and every success with both the album and the tour. I hope I get to cross paths with you and see you at a gig sometime soon. It's been a long time.
I hope so too, yeah.
Take it easy, Slyder. See you later.
Thanks very much. Great to chat to you, Rob. Good to see you.
When the rain comes
Thanks so much to Slyder Smith for rewinding the clock on his career, and we want to wish him luck with the new album Charm Offensive, which is out now, and be sure to catch him on tour with the Electric Boys all over the UK. Details on the album and tour can be found at slydersmith.com, and fingers crossed for more Last Great Dreamers material in the future too. If you enjoyed this chat and want to check out all 200 previous episodes, they're available to stream wherever you listen to podcasts, so be sure to like, subscribe or follow. Alternatively though, you can find them all at stvpod.com, along with some STV music, videos and merch. And of course, please be sure to check out or visit the Straight to Video 80s video shop, which is now open in Alfreton, Derbyshire. All details on that are all over social media, simply at 80s Video Shop. Okay, that is all for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, I can't wait to speak to you all again real soon.